Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we are already moving on to episode 2 of my Becoming a Better Cinephile series. I thought that initially I was going to space these videos out a little bit, and I think I still might going forward, but the way that this video just kind of organically came about, it's just, I realized I had to make a video on it and pretty much instantly. And so a couple weeks ago, at this point, I was watching Drive Away Dolls. And as I was watching it, I realized that that was my first Ethan Coen film. And then I was thinking about it, and I realized that I had seen one Joel Coen film in The Tragedy of Macbeth. And so I had realized that that was it, and I had never seen a joint Coen brothers film, which was again just kind of shocking in that sense, that because obviously they have such a classic filmography that you would think that I'd seen more. But again, that's kind of the whole point of this channel, and specifically this series, is just kind of realizing so many great and classic films that I haven't seen, and rectifying that, going back and seeing them. So after watching Drive Away Dolls, I decided I wanted to watch a couple Coen Brothers films. And so the first one I watched was Burn After Reading. I thought that maybe as a comedy, maybe that would be the most similar to the kind of the vibes and the themes, the feeling of Drive Away Dolls. And then obviously the next film I watched was just the most iconic one I could think of, the one that obviously, when you talk about the Coen brothers, it is probably their most recognized film, and that is No Country for Old Men. Now, while I liked Burn After Reading, No Country for Old Men obviously was the standout of the two, and it was the one that I loved, and that's the one that is deserving the most of its own standalone review and breakdown. So that is today's video. We are going to be reviewing No Country for Old Men. Lewin Moss stumbles upon dead bodies, $2 million, and a horde of heroin in a Texas desert, but methodical killer Anton Chigurh comes looking for it, with local sheriff Ed Tom Bell hot on his trail. The roles of prey and predator blur as the violent pursuit of money and justice collide. No Country for Old Men is a crime thriller from 2007 directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. The film stars Josh Brolin as Lewin Moss, Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh, and Tommy Lee Jones as Ed Tom Bell. No Country for Old Men was nominated for 8 Academy Awards and won 4. It won Best Picture, Best Director for the Coen brothers, Best Supporting Actor for Javier Bardem, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It was also nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. And so obviously any review here for No Country for Old Men, we have to start with just the Coen brothers, their impact on the film. So obviously first we're going to start with the Coen brothers, their directing. And for me specifically, in their directing style, there was two key elements that I think, decisions that they made as directors, that I think I loved the most, and what really just sold me on the film. And the first is just the sound design and the score. And by the score, I mean there is none. There is no, up until kind of the credits at the end is kind of when the first little bit of music kicks in. So it's quiet at times, and a lot of the scenes, there isn't just the background music, anything that's kind of adding to the atmosphere. It's just the sound design. It's just you're out in nature. You're hearing them walk on the gravel or on the rocks, and out, just kind of the out in the country noises. All of that I think is just kind of adding to the ambiance and adding to the atmosphere of the film. And then for me, just the biggest thing with their directing, the thing that I love the most, is the way that their directing just added so much tension to the film. There is one particular scene, because for the first little bit of the film, I think I was enjoying it, and I think I was, I was like, this is great filmmaking, this is, a good story, it's a good film, I can understand why so many people love this film, but I wasn't quite there yet. I hadn't fallen in love quite yet. And then obviously, kind of, I think this scene does come first. The gas station scene, I think, is a pretty iconic scene, and that's the first one where I kind of was like gripped a little bit more, where I was kind of more invested. But I was like, I still wasn't quite like in love with the film yet. For me, the scene that really just does it for me, the scene that I instantly was just hooked from that moment on the rest of the film, is, I think it's the second hotel that Josh Brolin's character Lewin goes to, and it's the hotel where he tells the receptionist, gives them the money and says, "Call me if anyone enters the building." And just from there on, that whole scene, the way that whole scene plays out, of him sitting on the bed, he discovers the tracker. He's then sitting, waiting, listening outside the hall. He hears someone, calls the front desk. No one answers. and then just that slow, from that moment on, you realize like something is about to happen, and we're in for just a very intense scene, a very intense moment at this point. And I was just gripped. And then just the way that I mean, it probably, the scene maybe lasts for, I don't know, 2 minutes maybe, but the way that it's just stretched to the point that he's sitting on the bed, and you hear Shigur, you hear Javier Bardem's character just walking down the hallway. You see his feet, you hear the beeping of his tracker, and then once, as soon as he turned off the lights outside, or took out the light bulb, whatever he does, as soon as that happened, instantly I was just like, I took like a breath, like I was, that's how invested, all of a sudden how intense this scene became for me, that I was like, oh, like we're going here. This is about to be an epic scene. And of course, the way that the whole scene plays out, it's, that's kind of the peak of I think the tension, but it really then just kind of becomes this great action scene that is still tense as it goes on. And so for me, just that was the thing for me. Is it's easy to say, like, I love thrillers. It's one of my favorite, honestly, probably one of my favorite genres. I love a good thriller. This is one of the best thrillers in that sense, of the way that it built the tension of the scenes, the way that the Coen brothers, their direction, built that tension was just so good. And then the next thing that I'm going to highlight is the Coen brothers again. It is their screenplay. This is a script that is just full of great lines, and I think also just a lot of misdirection. The way that some of the characters, the way their stories play out, isn't how you think they would play out. And I love kind of just, I read the letterboxed, the description for the film, and I love the way that it says, the last line was like, the roles of, I think it was saying something like, the roles of prey and predator kind of get blended and kind of get twisted, something along those lines, in their pursuit of this money, and of justice, of enacting their revenge, whatever the characters are trying to do. So it seems like it's set up in a sense of, like, you would maybe know how this film would go. You maybe know um, what the from where we're starting to where we're finishing. You would maybe know what the destination, or what how we're getting there. But then the script, it just adds a beautiful element of just chaos, of just things happen, extra characters kind of come in. There's a lot of different story arcs, and so when you have all these different characters, and you have different things that are happening, the way that they're all interacting, it's just forcing different things in there. And then there is just extra elements of just truly, Javier Bardem's character of Anton Chigurh. He embodies, I think, chaos in a sense of, like, just whenever he's on screen, anything can happen, and you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that that's just beautiful writing. It's just really, really well done. And then obviously, if we're talking about the screenplay, the script, you have to talk about, again, just the lines.
Well done. Don't put it in your pocket, sir. Don't put it in your pocket. It's your lucky quarter.
Where you want me to put it?
Anywhere not in your pocket. Or it'll get mixed in with the others and become just a coin. Which it is.
Chigurh's character specifically has just so many classic, and as he's playing mind games, kind of with, like, the gas station owner, like with the guy kind of in like that board meeting, when he asks, like, do you see me? He has all these lines that are just very well written, and again embody his character. But then Tommy Lee Jones specifically, also, especially at the very end, his monologue at the end is great. But he has a lot of other just other lines throughout the film as well, that really just kind of craft these full characters. And I just think that the screenplay was just very well done, and it really just created a full film for me.
And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. He's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there, and all that dark, and all that cold. And I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. Then I woke up.
And then the next thing I want to highlight as well, again continuing on with the Coen brothers, it's their editing. So I didn't know this when when I was watching the film, but sorry, I have to look this up. Roderick Janes is listed as the editor of the film. I didn't realize that was just like a pen name for the Coen brothers. I didn't realize that was I don't know. Again, I could just be saying something. This is just something I read on the internet, so who knows if that's true. But I believe the reason that the Coen brothers they edit all of their films, but the reason they use Roderick James as kind of a pseudonym, as like a pen name for their editing, is when the credits roll, they don't love having their names just appear so much all over the beginning of the film, so they kind of came up with this pseudonym as this fake identity to be the stand-in for the editor. I didn't realize that until I was kind of putting my thoughts, putting my review out on typing it all up. That's when I kind of came across that. So it's interesting, but again, the editing was one of the things that was a big highlight for me throughout the film, because this is a film that is very violent. It's a film that is very, again, I talk about the intensity. The intensity is really kind of spiked by the violence in the film. Obviously, a lot of shooting. Obviously, just Javier Bardem's character, just the kind of the cattle gun, kind of the weapon that he uses in this film is so unique, and it's so violent, and it's one of those things where there's a lot of blood and there's all of this stuff that's going on in the film, and so you can see how there is this sense of violence that adds to the intensity. And then there's just so many great editing choices because they didn't just overdo it with the violence. Again, the film could have been a whole lot more violent and a whole lot bloodier and a whole lot more hard to watch, but they make the decision multiple times throughout the film of the editing. You'll get the shots, example, the when he's pretending his truck's broken down and the guy pulls over and he asks him to take like the chickens out of the truck, and then all of a sudden it just hard cut to him cleaning out the back of that guy's truck. They don't even show you what happens there. Same thing with kind of the guy in I talk about the board meeting where he asks, do you see me? We never get to see how that plays out. All of a sudden we just cut. Same thing, kind of the final scene. I'm not gonna, for if you haven't seen it, I'm not gonna talk about who exactly is in the scene, but he's having a one-on-one kind of meeting, talking with someone, and then all of a sudden it kind of cuts, and it's kind of left ambiguous, and you don't. So they make this editing choice of you don't see some of the violence, and then there's a character who kind of dies off screen toward the end of the film, and the decision to not have that happen on screen, kind of have it off screen, that editing style, those editing choices, maybe I could see some people maybe not liking them and not being the favorite thing for some people, but for me specifically, I think that editing style of picking and choosing what violence to show you, what violence not to show you, I think adds again to kind of the element of chaos that's kind of written into this script, where there's just so much about this film that's unpredictable, or it's done in a specific manner that just it adds to the intensity, or adds to your uncomfortableness, I guess, is as kind of a way that I would say it. Just kind of how you're feeling, kind of just how tense you're feeling about the scene. How you're watching this, you're kind of on the edge of your seat, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's just there's so many different elements that are adding into that feeling, and that's really what kind of made this a great film for me. Is just all of those elements all together, just creating this sense of unease, and again, it's just all of the elements, those specifically were all the Coen brothers. Their the direction, the screenplay, and the editing all came together very beautifully to really make this film better than what I was anticipating it being. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the acting. Obviously, you've got to start with Javier Bardem. Won an Academy Award for his performance as Anton Chigurh. He is truly menacing in this film, and I think that if you ask a lot of people to name just like the most iconic villains in film, I think a lot of people are going to give you Heath Ledger's Joker. It might be the first name that comes up. I wouldn't be shocked if this is like the second name. Like because I've heard that a lot before I'd seen this film. So going into this film, that was one of the few things that I actually knew about the film, was just how good Javier Bardem is, and true. I mean, he truly is. His performance is phenomenal in this film. The way, I mean, it's obviously just so much how menacing and how scary he is coming across, but and I think part of why he is coming across as so scary is oftentimes he's delivering these lines, these creepy lines, or he's playing the mind games with you, and he's doing it with a smile on his face, to the point that a couple of these people are maybe like not quite sure what they're getting into because they're talking to this guy and maybe he seems a little off, but he's got this smile. You don't know what's happening, and then all of a sudden maybe he kills you, maybe he again, sometimes it cuts away. We don't know exactly what happens to you, but there's just he comes up with all these different like ways that he's interacting with people that just it's so uncomfortable and so you can just tell that this is truly a chaotic and an evil person, that he is just truly a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen from scene to scene, and so his performance really adds to that character. Then we're going to talk about Josh Brolin as Lewin, his role there as just kind of the man who he's in an interesting sense, he's kind of our protagonist. He's who we're following for the majority of the film, but we don't get a whole ton about this character. We get little snippets. We see the actions that he makes along the way, where we know that he's married and we know that he cares about his wife, and is once he kind of finds himself into the situation that he does, he makes sure that sends her up north, kind of sends her away, make sure that she's okay. But then we kind of see how he's getting into some of these situations. Obviously the catalyst for the majority of the chase of what happens is because he goes back to the scene of the crime. He goes back to bring the man he was talking to bring him some water. So you get little snippets of his character. You see that he's compassionate and he cares, about other people. So you get these little hints of, he's a caring, a person. He's a thoughtful person because the scene before he's sleeping in his bed and then he can't, or he's trying to sleep but he can't sleep because he's thinking about that guy and wants to go bring him that water. And so that's kind of what sets off a lot of this. Is you can see he's a guy that maybe makes some bad decisions here and there, but he seems like he's, as far as a lot of the characters, I guess I don't want to say every character, but as far as some of the characters in this film, you can tell he's a better person than some, but he still kind of has found himself in a situation that a lot of people probably wouldn't have found themselves in, and then it's at this point a fight for his life as he's being hunted down by this chaotic and this is an insane person, and so he the way that he acts, his acting performance, the way he's kind of a little bit more calm, a little bit more reserved. Again, no one in this movie is out there and crazy, and I think that's kind of what adds to the tension too. Like, it's Javier Bardem's he's not being the Joker. He's not that insane. He is insane, but he's not like acting like it. And so it's kind of the same way with Josh Brolin's character, where he is just a little bit more reserved and just kind of gives a very believable performance as this man who's just on the run for his life. And then the last acting performance we want to talk about, obviously, is Tommy Lee Jones. He is one of those actors, and especially in this film, where so much of the film you just buy him as this cop. He's one of those actors, for me personally, that there's not, I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot of Tommy Lee Jones films, honestly, but he's one of those actors in some of the films that I have seen him in where I just lose him in whatever character he's playing every single time. Like, I fully, I'm watching this and I'm not looking at his character and saying, that's Tommy Lee Jones. I'm looking at him and saying, like, oh yeah, that's the sheriff of this town. Like, he has been the sheriff. I believe that Tommy Lee Jones's character has been alive and has lived, I don't know if they say his age, but he's lived that whole life as being the sheriff of that town since, I think he says, like, since he was like in his 20s or something in the film. In the opening monologue, he talks about how long he's been the sheriff of this town. Like, I believe that his performance, you really believe in him as a character. And so again, all three of the acting performances, they all bring a whole lot to the film as well. And then the last thing that I want to touch on, another positive for the film, is Roger Deakins' cinematography. Obviously, any film that's shot by Roger Deakins is going to be beautiful. The way that he uses so much natural lighting is kind of a big kind of staple in Roger Deakins' his cinematography, his shooting, his style. And this film is no different. The way that there are so many scenes in this film of just kind of the natural lighting, but then there's just a lot of scenes kind of within the shadows. You get a lot of Josh Brolin specifically kind of in the shadows a little bit, but then there's just kind of the iconic kind of shot toward the kind of in the third act of Javier Bardem's character in that hotel room, like in the shadows. And so there's just so many different the way that the film is shot, the way that it's the scenes are staged, and the way that we're using the lighting, and some of the scenes as well, just kind of Javier Bardem walking down that hallway, and you get all of the lights in the hallway that are kind of adding to the scene. It's so well shot, and so there's just so many things factoring into this film. When you're talking about the direction, you're talking about the acting, you're talking about the screenplay, the cinematography, like everything is just coming together and really creating a masterful film. And so I'm glad that I took the time out to go back and watch this film, a film that I'd been meaning to watch for a long time, long overdue, and it was a great watch. And so again, in this series, if you haven't seen it, there's episode 1 I did on the good, the bad, and the ugly. At the end of that video, I said that there's going to be kind of 2 questions that I want to ask about every single one of these films, kind of just like a little bit of a checklist, if you will, for these films. So the first question is, do I consider this a classic and a must-watch film? Pretty much, do I recommend this for you if you have not seen No Country for Old Men? And this is absolutely a yes. Obviously, I think your enjoyment of the film maybe is going to depend a little bit on your tolerance for violence or for potentially some kind of upsetting scenes in the film. I will mention that there are multiple animals in the film that are injured and killed, and so it is it's a tougher watch for some people, but I would recommend it on a whole for the majority of people. I think this is a classic. There is obviously and obviously, I think Hollywood, the Academy, they agreed by giving it their Best Picture award. So I do think a lot of people will agree in that sense that it's a classic, it's a must watch, and it's one that for me I feel ashamed that it's taken me what has it been 16, 17 years to get around to this one. So I would consider this a must watch. And then the second question I want to ask is it a film that I'm going to rewatch, or is it a film that I'm glad I watched it once? That's probably all. I'm never going to come back to it again. This is a resounding yes. I'm going to watch this again. This is a film that has the potential to crack an almost semi-regular rotation for me. There are obviously I don't have the most set, like it's not like there's certain films that I'm just like, yes, I will watch that every single year, but there are a lot of films that does kind of happen, like Get Out and Parasite and Little Women. There's a bunch of these films that I love, that they just kind of stay in my regular rotation. I think No Country for Old Men has a chance of almost being in that group of a film that I will see this film again. I will watch it multiple times. It's a film that I'm eager to share with some of my friends that maybe they haven't seen it. Some of my friends that don't watch a whole ton of movies. So again, yes, absolutely yes, this is a film that I will watch again. And then for the last kind of little question, or the last thing that I want to do in this segment for each of the films, is my Letterboxd rating for the film. For No Country for Old Men, I am giving this a 5 out of 5. Now, this is a film, for me personally, with my rankings, the way that I rate movies on Letterboxd, it's rare that I give, on first watch, that I just give a movie straight out 5 out of 5. Usually I'm, I'll give a lot of films kind of 4.5 on first watches, and then on a second watch is where I determine whether I want to bump it up or bump it down, or I kind of tweak the ratings from there. It's rare that there's a movie that on first watch I instantly just love it that much that it's an instant 5 out of 5. This absolutely is the case for that. This is a 5 out of 5 movie. And that's it. That is my review for No Country for Old Men. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of this film, if you like this film, if it's a film that you're impressed that I haven't gotten around to for 17 years at this point. But then also, just while you're in the comments as well, let me know of any other Coen brother films that you want me to check out. I know that there's still a couple more pretty big, pretty prominent Coen brother films that I haven't seen. So I would absolutely, after seeing this, it's interesting because so I mentioned that I watched Burn After Reading, and I do think that it's a good film, but I can kind of see that and I've kind of heard the consensus with the Coen brothers is it's a little bit more of an up and down type of filmography. There's a lot of films that people are like, they're classic films, must watch, like 5 out of 5. These are like the top films. And then there are some people are just like, it's kind of the weaker efforts for the Coen brothers. So I'm kind of interested in just their filmography as a whole. I'm interested in kind of checking it all out and kind of seeing maybe what's the case there. Is it kind of more whenever the Coen brothers are in the comedy pocket that maybe it isn't as great, or maybe when they're kind of more in this serious dramatic films, maybe that's what works a little bit better for them. So I'm interested to kind of just see their whole filmography and see, again, what kind of works for them, what doesn't. So let me know any Coen brother films that you would recommend that I check out. And then also, while you're in the comments, just let me know of any films that you consider classics, any films that are like your favorite films of all time. And I'll read all of those comments, and I'll put them into consideration of videos that I'll watch for potential upcoming videos in this series that's becoming a better cinephile series. Again, this is episode 2, I guess, of this series, and it instantly is probably, as much as I love doing all the Oscar content, this for me is super fun, doing a lot of these, becoming a better cinephile, watching these classic films that I just haven't seen for all this time. This is a lot of fun kind of doing this, so I really am looking forward to getting into more episodes in this series. So, please make sure to recommend some videos, recommend some movies for me in the comments below, and I'll look at them and potentially make some videos about them for you. area. So thank you again so much for watching this video, and have a great day.